Good morning, St. Augustine. Your access to the voices of top local newsmakers starts now. Here's your host, Liz Ryan.
Good morning, and thank you for tuning in today. This program may be a little bit difficult to listen to, but it's something that's so very important. The subject of animal abuse, something that most of us feel extremely strongly about. And there are some people out there that are actually doing something about it. For example, this morning's guest, Debbie Dorino. I call her the patron saint of dogs, but most people call her animal rights activist. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning, Liz. How are you?
I'm terrific. This conversation, like I said, is going to be painful and difficult at times, but it's really necessary, and you're doing God's work. And I just want to thank you for your tireless work on behalf of animals who have been cruelly abused.
Oh, thank you so much. It's much needed, that's for sure.
So for the people who aren't familiar with you, Debbie, could you tell me a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up, and how did you become an animal rights activist?
Okay, yeah, I was born here in Daytona Beach, Florida, so I was raised here all my life, and we always had dogs growing up also, so I've always been, I love animals, and that's pretty much it. I went to high school here, and I work here for a law firm. My boss is a retired judge in private practice and also loves animals as well. So fortunately for me, he lets me take some of my time away from work to do my animal stuff.
What is your preferred breed of dog, if I may ask, Debbie?
I like red-bone coonhounds. We've had 3 of those breeds already, and they're very family-oriented dogs, and they're very lovable dogs. And my most recent dog, Penny, we got her about 5 months after our dog Lucy passed away. She was in a rescue up in North Carolina, and she was just emaciated and just skin and bones. She was about 3.5 months old, and my husband saw her online and said, we need to get her. So we drove up there, and we got Penny, and Penny's the sweetest. She will just sit there on the sidewalk when she sees you walking and wait for you to get to where she's sitting and just wags her tail the whole time waiting. So hard she wags her tail, her whole body shakes. And so
it must be really hard to think about what that little puppy went through.
Yeah, she was very skinny, but welcome to the Dorino home where we eat a lot of pizza, and Penny is 96 pounds now. She doesn't eat pizza, but yeah, we got her back up to speed.
Just fattened her up, huh?
Fattened her up, yeah.
We sure have a way with words, Debbie. I interviewed you recently for a news story, and I'll never forget what you told me. You said, you hurt an animal, you make me cry. You make me cry, I write a law. And I'll never forget that, Debbie. And the first law you wrote was Ponce's Law. Tell us about that law, Debbie.
So Ponce's Law is the felony animal cruelty statute for the state of Florida. And what it does, part of the sentencing is a judge at the court's discretion can ban you from having contact or owning an animal. Majority of that goes with probation because the courts have to have jurisdiction over you to enforce that. So, for instance, if you're on probation for animal cruelty in Daytona, and say you're on probation for 3 years, then for 3 years you cannot have contact with animals, you can't own an animal. Don't you dare go to the doggy park either. It's very, very strict, and everybody pretty much knows that's a big point with Ponce's Law is that no contact order. And I also did a animal abuse database here in Volusia County so that if you are convicted and you are banned, you have that order, your name anyway is going to be in the database. So that's just another way of checking to make sure, like say animal control came upon somebody that did something to an animal, they can very easily just with a click look and see if they're in the database. Are they allowed to have an animal or not? And if they're not, you're going to get arrested. So that's, that's the good part about Ponce's Law. And actually the database, it helps a lot too. So that's where it started. Like you said, if I see a story with animal abuse in it and you make me cry, I cry, and then I get mad, and then I create a law.
Oh, Debbie, I'm sure that Ponce's Law has spared so many innocent little puppies from being cruelly abused and tortured. And here comes, again, one of the most difficult parts of this interview. Tell us who Ponce was, Debbie.
Ponce was a black lab puppy. He was about 9 months old in Ponce Inlet, named after Ponce Inlet, I guess, by the owner. And he came home one night after being gone for probably 12 hours, out drinking on his boat, and Ponce had been left out in the house, not caged or anything, and he just shredded some papers and CDs, and he did what a puppy would do if you left him alone with that kind of stuff. And the owner came home, and he just slaughtered this dog. I had the necropsy report. And, he took his head and he bashed it in the wall. He made a hole in the wall with his head, crushed his teeth. He stabbed him 7 times. He had a punctured lung, broken ribs, a blunt force trauma to the head, the stomach. It was horrible, horrible. And when the police got there, he was in the corner of the backyard, blood coming, broke his jaw, obviously, also. And just blood coming from his mouth. So a lot of people thought that he was gagged. No, he wasn't gagged. That was his tongue. And so it was a horrific killing. It made me cry for days. And then I finally had to get a grip, and I said, that's it. I'm going to create a law. We're not going to have this here, happening.
And what happened to the monster that did that, Debbie?
So that was Travis Archer was his owner. And because all this happened prior to Ponce's Law, he fell under the old statute, which is why we had to change that as well. And he got a year, 364 days in jail. He had no contact order with the animals while he was on probation. So after he did his sentence, he went right into 3 years of probation. He had fines up to $13,000 in fines. He had to make a $5,000 donation to the local shelter, and so that's what happened to him. And because of what he did to Ponce, that's how Ponce's Law came to be. So you can't actually charge him under a law until it's actually in effect. So unfortunately, he got a fairly light sentence with the year in jail. They tried to early terminate, which is a thing that they do sometimes, and we told him absolutely not. He is going to serve his whole 3-year probation, and that's no walk in the park. You violate in any way, you're going back to jail. So. That's what happened with him, and I imagine he moved away from this area. We had a trial and everything, and the judge made good on his sentence to the best of her ability.
All right. Wow, what a sad story. You're listening to Good Morning St. Augustine. I'm your host, Liz Ryan, chatting this morning with a woman whose life mission is to keep dogs from being tortured in the hands of cruel monsters, Debbie Dorino. So, Debbie, once Ponce's Law was passed, you built on that with Dexter's Law. And before we get into Dexter's Law, I do want to give props to who sponsored Ponce's Law.
Senator Tom Leake, then at the time was with the House of Representatives. He was Representative Tom Leake, and he was my House sponsor. And then now Congressman Greg Steube was my Senate sponsor at the time. So both of them did the bill for me.
Well, thank you to them for sponsoring that law. So you built on Ponce's Law with Dexter's Law. Who was Dexter, Debbie?
Dexter was he's between 3 and 4 year old shelter favorite in Pinellas County. at their animal shelter. He was the sweetest dog ever. And Dexter was adopted out by a man named Domingo Rodriguez. And within just a day or two, they found his body at I think it's Fort DeSoto State Park. And Dexter was mutilated, wrapped in plastic, and his head had been decapitated.
Oh, boy.
And so out of that, I did the same thing. I cried, I got mad, and you are definitely going to prison. And so I started working on Dexter's Law, which kind of is similar in a way. It's sort of a part of Ponce's Law, where we add a multiplier of 1.25, which gives you more points, gets you closer to prison time for the horrific cases. So it's really going to be up to the state attorneys and judges if they're going to add that multiplier on, because they're going to determine, was this case so horrific that, we need to do that. And the other part of Dexter's Law is the statewide animal abuse database that I created also and proposed. And Senator Leak also sponsored that bill, along with Representative Linda Cheney and Representative Meg Weinberger. Now, because the way we had the sponsors going, we ended up having to combine the bill into one instead of doing two separate bills. We made it one, so actually Representative Cheney and Senator Leak took the ball on that one and ran with it and got it passed. And so we're really, really happy. And the really cool thing is, I've done these laws, and they were all passed in their first year, which doesn't usually happen. And the statewide database, not many states have anything in place. Some of them have registries, but probably not more than 5 or 6 states out of the whole country even have anything in place. So that just puts Florida right up in the forefront once again for good animal cruelty laws. In fact, when I did Ponce's Law put Florida as number 13 in the nation for good animal cruelty law statutes. They're very good laws. They're very strong, and as soon as I say something to, like if I call a state attorney or I call an animal control officer, I'll say, "You've heard of Ponce's Law, haven't you?" "Oh, yes." So it's very well known throughout the state.
The database literally puts a face to these unimaginable heinous acts, right?
Right. So what happens is every day the clerk of courts in every single county, we have 67 counties, the information that goes in the court files gets electronically transferred to the FDLE website, and they store all of that information in just a specified location in their, wherever up there. And so what Dexter's Law does is it requires the FDLE to put a searchable database on their website, and by way of a link. So it'll be a link, and you click on the link, and it'll bring up all of the animal abuse cases, people charged with the animal cruelty, whether they were convicted or not. Their name is going to be in there, and this way, everyone can look and see if a certain person trying to adopt out an animal is in the database or not. Law enforcement can look through it. Animal control will use it. Shelters, rescues, your everyday person trying to rehome. Everybody has access to it because it's just a link on the website. That's all it is. It's not a registry. Nobody's registering. I know there's people out there that have misinterpreted what it does, but I want to make it clear, this is not a registry. This is just a database, a compilation of people that have been charged with animal cruelty throughout the entire state of Florida.
And how do you get to that database online? Where is it exactly?
So it will be on the FDLE website, and they'll have a link, labeled whatever. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to label it or how they're going to word it, but it will be easy to find. It's either going to be animal abuser database or list. I really don't know exactly the exact name that they're going to call it till they actually put it together. It's a lot of work, so it won't be effective till January 1st, 2026 to give them time to build all this.
Once it's up and running, people will be able to just Google that and come up with it.
You can Google it, and I can guarantee you it will be blasted out in the news as soon as it's up and running, because people will be waiting to use that. So we need to make a way, and typically what I'll do is I'll share that with the news stations and newspapers and Facebook and social media, just letting them know, hey, the database is up and running now. Go check it out.
Can St. Augustine's local morning news be the first one you contact?
You will be the first person I call. Yeah.
I want the exclusive. I want dibs on that story the minute the database hits the internet. So you wrote Dexter's Law, and it was passed by the House and the Senate, and I know it was signed by the governor because I saw you on TV.
Well, yes, you did.
That was last week. Tell me about it.
Well, it's really cool because just before we did the bill signing, they had the 2025 Florida Heroes at the governor's mansion, and I was actually nominated by Representative Cheney as a recipient for that award. And so while at the governor's mansion, they hand out your award and everything, but they also had posters up, and it told people what you did or why you're being recognized. So they actually had Dexter's Law on that as well. And then the bill passed to all the committees and everything. And so the governor did a ceremonial bill signing down at Big Dog Ranch Rescue in Loxahatchee, Florida, down by West Palm. And so, of course, I was invited and went down there, and the governor spoke, and it was my law, Dexter's Law, the database, and then Trooper's Law that was also signed down there. And Trooper's Law was the dog during Hurricane Milton that was tied up to the fence on the side of the road. And the trooper, Morales, was the one that rescued him out of there. So me and him, both of our bills that were, signed into law was done at that same time. And it was really great. Big Dog Ranch Rescue is a beautiful place and a great place to have that many people come and watch the governor talk. And, of course, I spoke about Dexter's Law and explained it. And Officer Morales also spoke about his law, Trooper's Law, which also was created by the HSUS and lawmakers. My good friend Kate McFall was very instrumental in Trooper's Law as well. What
does Trooper's Law do, Debbie?
So Trooper's Law, what it does, if you tie up an animal during a hurricane or natural disaster, you can be charged with a felony. And what's really kind of cool is the guy that committed that crime was charged right away under Ponce's Law because Trooper's Law wasn't in effect yet. You see how they kind of circle around each other, and it helps in every situation. That's what Trooper's Law is. Like, there's plenty of things you can do with your pet. You don't tie them up on the side of the road. During hurricanes, the governor's made it where you can bring your pet to the shelter with you or whatnot. There's just no excuse for someone doing that either.
Thank goodness for those two laws. You're listening to Good Morning St. Augustine. I'm your host, Liz Ryan, chatting this morning with the patron saint of dogs, as I call her, Debbie DeRino. Now, in addition to Ponce's Law and Dexter's Law, I don't know how many hours are in your day, Debbie, but you've also worked on a lot of ordinances. Can you tell us about some of those?
Well, my good friend, Mayor Paritsky of Ponce Inlet, wrote an ordinance for Ponce Inlet for anti-tethering. And I liked it so much, I told her, we're good friends, I said, hey, I need to pass your ordinance around in these cities. So every city in Volusia County has an anti-tethering ordinance. And what I added in addition to the ordinance, is a shelter definition. So people know what a doghouse is, basically. As people have animals and all kinds of stuff tied up outside, they can't do that anymore. So that was a great ordinance to pass through the cities. Now, our biggest issue is making sure our county officials, animal control, law enforcement enforce this. As laws, these ordinances, they're not going to work if people don't enforce them. So we always, like to reach out and make sure that they are aware of these ordinances and laws that are being put in place as well.
Mm-hmm. And the hot weather is coming on fast. People need to know, do not leave your dogs in hot cars, even with the window cracked open. I mean, the temperature inside your car can soar up to 120 degrees before you know it. And law enforcement does have the right, am I correct, Debbie, to break your window if you leave a dog in a car on a hot summer day?
Yes, that's correct. If you leave your dog out there, you can break that window and you will not be held liable for breaking that window. That is part of one of the state statutes that was passed, so that if you do break a car window, they can't come after you if there was a pet in the car. It only takes a couple of minutes for an animal to have a stroke in that heat. And so it's very important that you get them out as soon as possible.
And it still happens all the time, doesn't it, Debbie? Even with all, of all the awareness surrounding it, people are still doing it.
People are still doing it, and they think because in their mind, I'll be right back. Well, I'll be right back turns into 30 minutes to an hour. And 10 minutes, your dog is going to die if you don't get him out of that car. You can't, you just can't do that. It's cruelty. It's animal cruelty. And so with that ordinance, that is in place. And like I said, it's a statute protecting you if you, bash that car window in. So that's a good thing about it.
Another thing, speaking of the heat, another good thing to keep in mind is that, we're usually in shoes when we're outside and the pavement can get awfully hot. And that's painful for dogs' pads. Right.
They have to be very careful. People don't realize they're not wearing a pair of sneakers like you. And so, and their pads, their feet, they're small. And you keep walking them on pavement and on roads, you're burning their paws, and I've seen it to the extent that these paws are bleeding from that. Yeah, really bad. It's very important that people realize that if you're going to walk your dog, don't walk it in the heat of the day. Wait till later tonight. Walk them in the grass, take them to a playground, but don't walk them in the street, on the sidewalks. In the heat of the summer, because it's very painful. It's very painful.
Right, absolutely. This half hour, Debbie, is going by so fast, and I don't want to let you go without talking about something that's near and dear to you, the Domestic Abuse Center, formerly known as the Beacon Center, and you're doing something really cool with them. Tell us about that, Debbie.
Yeah, so I am going to have 3 kennel runs built at the center so that victims can bring their pet with them. And what it'll do is it'll be like a doggy door attached to the building, to the room of the person that's there with their pet, so that their pet can go out. It'll be an 8-foot long kennel run, and of course it'll be tarped so that to keep the sun from beating on them. And it'll be sort of like AstroTurf, so that they'll be responsible for cleaning up after their pet. But if you need to water it down for some reason or clean it in that way, that's accessible. And what those kennel runs do is they end in a play area. So at the end of that kennel run, there'll be a gate. At each one, there'll be 3 kennel runs, leading off of each person's room. And it'll end in a big play area. So you can either take your pet into the play area, because you don't want to play with them in a kennel run, because that's where they're doing their business, but bring them to the play area and play with them, or let them run around, let them play ball, So the other pets that come, you can maybe introduce your pet to another pet and they can play. And, they need to be healed just like the victim. A lot of times they are the victim also.
Yeah.
If you leave that pet behind, that pet may die. So a lot of people stay with their pet, so they protect them. Well, now you can bring your pet with you to the shelter, and together you can heal. You know, they exuberate so much love, and I can't imagine being without a dog. But I did take care of a little dog named Tiny. They reached out to me, a little Chihuahua, and the owner was a victim and staying at the center. And they did allow her, because the dog was so tiny, and it was named Tiny, to bring her with the owner. And that little dog had a shattered elbow because the abuser not only beat up the victim, he also kicked Tiny so hard in her side and elbow that it shattered. It can't be fixed. And so they reached out to me and asked me if I could help, because I do have also the Ponce Animal Foundation, which helps people who can't afford vet bills or are victims, of domestic violence, stray dogs, So anyway, I did help Tiny, and I told him I basically would take care of her for the rest of her life with medicines for the pain. That's a pain that's, controlled, but it's always going to be there. So we don't want that happening to our pets, and probably going to get that started within a month or two, and it takes about 6 weeks, I was told, to get it, completed. So we should see that real soon, and I think that's going to be a great thing. I think it's going to be great for people, saving the victim and the pet.
Is there a website that people can go to, Debbie, if they want to help?
You can go to the PonceAnimalFoundation.org and donate towards it. I had a lot of people donate towards the building of it. The building, it's expensive. I will say it's expensive because of the construction and everything, but it's certainly well worth it to have that done. So each kennel runs between probably $4,000 or so.
God bless you for what you do. I don't know how your spirit endures all the unimaginable, horrific things you see, but I do thank God for you and people like you who can day in and day out fight for the victims of these horrific crimes. And I thank you for sharing your stories with me this morning.
Well, thank you, Liz. Thank you for having me and letting me share the stories and the bills, because they're very important. They're very important that they are enforced and that people know they're out there.
Absolutely. Ponce's Law and Dexter's Law, thank you so much for doing that. You've changed the lives of so many animals and prevented so much suffering. So what do you think you'll do with the rest of your Sunday, Debbie?
Well, I will probably spend it with my best friend, Penny, my red-boned coonhound. She is a character and a goofy one. So we're pretty close with our pets. We're very bonded with them, and having grown up with them, and this particular breed is just very family-oriented. They want to be with you all the time. They don't let you out of their sight. You may be sitting on the couch and they're across the way and they're staring at you because they just don't let you out of their sight. So that's probably what we'll do. We spend a lot of time with our pet.
Oh, well, give Penny a hug for me, okay, Debbie?
I will.
Okay, thank you so much. Remember, all of our programs can be downloaded as a podcast. Go to flaglerbroadcasting.com, click on podcast, and scroll down to Good Morning St. Augustine. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday in our beautiful, ancient, historic city.